You think your choices are being made in real time. You think there is a living present. In it, you weigh options. You reject one future, you cause another to exist. Physics gives you a colder possibility. What feels like decision may be your internal view of a structure that does not wait for you to complete it. The unsettling part is not that your brain can be predicted. It is that the moment you call now may not hold the status you think it does. If the present is not absolute, then the stage on which free will seems to act is already unstable. And if that stage is unstable, then the feeling of authorship may rest on a misunderstanding of time itself. You do not experience your life as a four-dimensional object. You experience it as passage, urgency, selection. That is exactly why the illusion is powerful. It does not feel like a theory. It feels like the most direct fact you have ever known. I am here. This is now. And something depends on what I choose next. But relativity does not begin by asking how freedom feels. It begins by asking what kind of world could make different observers disagree about the structure of the present. Once that question is taken seriously, free will stops looking like a private certainty. And once the present loses its privilege, choice loses the ground that made it intuitive. It starts looking like a local sensation inside a reality far less centered on human experience than you were taught to assume. You feel the objection forming. Even if time is stranger than it appears, you still seem to choose. You pause. You hesitate. You move one way instead of another. That feeling is not trivial. It is the center of experience. But physics does not ask how central that feeling is. It asks something more severe. What must reality be like for different observers to disagree about what is happening now? That question sounds technical. It is not. It reaches into the structure that your sense of choice depends on. You believe there is one shared present. Physics says that shared present may not exist. Two events can seem simultaneous to one observer and not to another. Not because one of them is confused, not because one of them measured badly, but because simultaneity itself is not fixed across motion. That is where the problem begins. If the universe does not provide one common slice called now, then the moment in which you think your decision is unfolding loses its universal status. It becomes local. It belongs to your frame, not to reality as a whole. This is not a detail at the edge of physics. It is built into relativity. The equations do not preserve a cosmic present. They preserve relationships, intervals, causality, structure, but not the now that intuition keeps assuming. This is why Einstein matters here. Not as a symbol, not as a face attached to genius. He matters because the geometry implied by his theory removes the privilege of the present. And once the present loses privilege, choice no longer stands where you thought it stood. You feel as if you are positioned at the frontier of reality, past behind you, future ahead. Decision happening at the border. Relativity weakens that image. There is no physical law that marks your present moment as the place where the universe is being written. There is no universal spotlight moving across space-time, turning possibility into fact. You believe reality becomes real now. Physics says reality does not wait for now to arrive. That is the open wound in the idea, because free will is rarely imagined as a feature of geometry. It is imagined as intervention, a self located in the present, facing unrealized futures, making one of them actual. But if the present is not absolute, then that picture is compromised. And if that picture is compromised, the language of choice begins to drift. You can still say that you deliberate. You can still say that you decide. What becomes uncertain is what those words are describing. Are they naming a power that creates reality forward in time? Or are they naming what it feels like to occupy one segment of a larger space-time structure? That distinction changes everything, because once different observers carry different maps of the present, your private certainty stops being enough. The world no longer has to match the sequence in which you experience it. And that means the flow that seems to carry your choices may not belong to the world itself. Einstein saw where this leads. If past, present, and future do not divide reality in the way we assume, then our deepest intuitions about becoming need to be re-examined. Because the issue is no longer whether you feel free. The issue is whether physics allows the kind of present that freedom usually requires. And for the first time, those are not the same question. The next step is harder, because once the present stops acting like a universal boundary, time no longer looks like a river carrying you forward. It starts looking like structure. And inside that structure, the thing you call choice may not be doing what you think it is. You still feel time moving, not as an idea, as pressure, as sequence, as before and after, as the sense that each moment arrives, replaces the last one, and disappears. That feeling seems too basic to question, for you. You do not infer it, you live inside it. This is why the next step is difficult. Physics does not begin by denying your experience. It begins by separating experience from structure. It may contain order, memory, decay, motion, but none of that proves that time itself is flowing. You believe time passes. Physics says passage may be how reality is experienced, not how it is built. That distinction is small at first. Then it widens. Because once flow is no longer fundamental, the present stops looking like a moving edge. It starts looking like a way of organizing perception. You remember the past, you anticipate the future. That asymmetry feels like evidence, but it may only describe how information is arranged for creatures like us. Expectation points the other. That does not tell you what time is, it tells you how consciousness encounters order. The illusion becomes stronger because everything in life reinforces it. Speech unfolds, music unfolds, pain unfolds, choice unfolds. You never meet your life as a complete structure. You meet it as a continuous disclosure. That makes flow feel undeniable. But relativity places pressure exactly there. It asks whether the present you feel unfolding through can be treated as a universal feature of the world. And the answer is no. Imagine two distant events. A light flashes in one place. Another light flashes elsewhere. One observer judges them simultaneous. Another observer, moving relative to the first, does not. Neither observer is broken. The disagreement is not about appearance layered over reality. It is built into measurement itself. Simultaneity depends on motion. That is the fracture. Because your sense of time flowing quietly assumes that there is one shared present moving forward for everyone. Relativity removes that assumption. You believe the universe advances together. Physics says different observers do not share one advancing now. Once that falls, the image of time as a river begins to fail. A river has one front. A current has one direction for all who stand in it. Relativity gives you no such thing. It gives you a structure in which different observers slice events differently, without any slice becoming the official present of reality. That matters more than it first appears to, because free will usually hides inside that official present. It assumes a privileged moment in which the future is still open and the past is fixed. But what if that moment is not physically privileged at all? What if it is only yours? What if it belongs to your observation, not to the universe as a whole. Then the phrase "right now" changes meaning. It stops naming the place where reality is being made. It starts naming your local position within it. This is the shift from strange physics to genuine instability. If no observer can claim the absolute present, then no observer can claim access to the boundary where possibility becomes fact. There is still causality. There is still order. There is still the difference between what can affect you and what cannot. Relativity does not dissolve structure. It replaces one structure with another. But it does remove the global now that intuition keeps demanding. And once that global now is gone, the feeling of temporal flow loses its foundation. You still feel it, but physics no longer has to honor it as fundamental. That is the point where intuition stops guiding and starts misleading. You believe there is one present through which everything passes. Physics says there may be no such present at all. And if there is no absolute present, then the stage on which choice appears to happen in real time has already begun to disappear. If the present is not absolute, then time cannot remain what intuition made it. It cannot remain a moving line sweeping across the world. It cannot remain a universal frontier where reality is still undecided. Something else has to replace that image. Relativity offers structure, not passage, not a world that is constantly becoming, but a world described as spacetime. This is the shift that changes the pressure of the argument. Spacetime does not treat time as something added to an already complete space. It treats time as part of the geometry. Events do not wait to be pushed into existence by a moving present. They occupy positions. They stand in relation. They form structure. You believe reality unfolds. Physics says reality may be better described as a four-dimensional arrangement. That is not wordplay. It changes what a life is. Under ordinary intuition, you exist at a point called now. The past is what you were. The future is what you are not yet. That picture is psychologically natural. It is also exactly the picture relativity stops supporting. In spacetime, your life is not best pictured as a point advancing. It is better pictured as a line, a world line, not a metaphor, a physical description. A world line is the history of an object through spacetime. Not only where it is, also when. It traces continuity without requiring a universal present to carry it forward. This matters because it removes a hidden assumption. You have been imagining yourself as the thing that moves. But in space-time, what physics gives you is the whole trajectory, not just one glowing instant at its edge. You believe you are a self moving through time. Physics says you may be a structure extended within it. That is where identity begins to shift. The version of you at 5, the version of you now, the version of you 10 years from now. Ordinary language treats them as one being passing through stages. Space-time allows a colder view. They are different regions of one continuous structure. None of them has absolute ontological privilege. The present self feels central only because experience is local, not because physics marks it as the real version. That is why the destabilization does not stay abstract. It turns inward. If your life is a world line, then the self who says, "I am deciding now," may only be one location within a larger pattern. That location is real. Its thoughts are real. Its hesitation is real. But its privilege becomes uncertain. it may not be the author standing outside the structure. It may be an interior event within the structure. That difference is severe, because free will is usually imagined as an act of forward creation. A present self faces unreal futures. It selects. Reality responds. One branch becomes real, the others do not. That picture depends on passage. It depends on a future that does not yet exist in any meaningful way. But once space-time replaces passage, that picture begins to fracture. The future no longer looks purely absent. It looks unaccessed. Not unreal, unreached from here. You believe your choice creates what comes next. Physics asks whether what comes next is being created at all. That is not yet a refutation. It is pressure, careful pressure, because nothing here proves that deliberation is fake. Nothing here proves that agency is meaningless. What it does is remove the intuitive stage on which agency once stood. It removes the privileged now. It removes the moving frontier. It removes the image of reality waiting for your decision to finish it. And once those supports are gone, choice begins to look different. Less like a force that pushes the universe forward, more like the internal experience of how one part of a world line encounters another. You still deliberate. You still compare outcomes. You still feel alternatives. But the metaphysical claim inside that feeling has become unstable. The instability deepens because identity itself is no longer simple. If the self is not a point, but an extended structure, then who exactly is free? The present slice? The entire world line? Some local process inside the line? That question does not weaken because it sounds philosophical. It sharpens. Because physics has already changed the object under discussion. Free will is no longer being tested inside flowing time. It is being tested inside space-time. And inside that geometry, the thing you call choice starts to look less like the origin of reality and more like a local event inside a structure larger than the self that experiences it. Then the deeper possibility appears. What if the instability is not coming from time alone? What if it is coming from your position inside time? That changes the frame. Until now, the pressure has been aimed at the present, at passage, at simultaneity, at the loss of an absolute now. But the larger disturbance does not begin when time stops behaving the way intuition expects. It begins when the self stops standing outside what physics describes. You do not merely observe a strange temporal structure. You belong to it. That is the pivot. Because free will is often protected by a hidden image, a subject in the present, looking forward, meeting possibilities not yet real, choosing among them. That image survives only if the self can stand at the edge of becoming. Relativity does not grant that edge, and space-time does not reserve a special platform for the observer within it. Einstein stated the consequence with unusual clarity. For those committed to physics, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. The sentence is often repeated, usually too loosely. Its force is not emotional. It is geometric. If different observers do not share one absolute present, then the separation between what is real now, what was real, and what will be real cannot define the universe at its most basic level. It may define experience. It may define memory. It may define how consciousness meets order, but it does not define the structure itself. That is why this is not just a claim about time. It is a claim about where you are when you say, I choose. If you are not outside the structure, looking in, then choice is no longer a power acting on space-time from the privileged present. It becomes something else, a local event, a situated process, a pattern within the geometry, not a force arriving from beyond it. This does not solve the problem. It enlarges it. Because now the question is not whether time flows. The argument is no longer about feeling. It is about placement. The question is whether the self that feels free was ever located where freedom seemed to happen. Not in language, not in psychology, not in moral instinct, but in the actual structure described by relativity. And if that location was an illusion, then the next step is unavoidable. You do not need a new psychology. You need a new map of what a moment is, and what a self is, inside a universe that does not organize itself around the feeling of now. Space-time now has to be faced more directly, not as a strange abstraction, as the structure that replaces the picture you were using before. The older picture was simple. A three-dimensional world exists. Time passes through it. The present updates reality. The past is gone. The future is not yet there. That model feels natural. It also fails under relativity. Space-time does not describe a world waiting to be refreshed by now. It describes a four-dimensional order in which events have location, not only in space, in time as well. That is the first reveal. The second follows from it. If events have position within a four-dimensional structure, then the difference between past, present, and future cannot be the basic way reality separates what exists from what does not. That does not mean all moments feel the same. It means feeling is no longer the measure of ontology. This is where the block universe enters. The name can mislead. It sounds static, frozen, lifeless. That is not the point. The point is structural. Reality is not built by a moving present. It is better described as an ordered whole in which different events stand in different relations, without requiring one global moment to bring them into being. You believe the future is waiting to be made. Physics says the future may not be waiting in that sense at all. It may be later than you. But later is not the same as unreal. That is why the idea resists intuition, because intuition treats access as existence. What you cannot yet reach feels absent. What you remember feels settled. What you occupy feels uniquely real. Space-time does not preserve those privileges. It preserves order, separation, causal structure, but not the emotional ranking that experience assigns to one moment over another. Then another question appears. If the block universe removes a universal present, why do you still feel a direction? Why do you feel carried from what has happened toward what has not? This is where entropy matters, not as decoration, as the reason experience has an arrow. Physical systems tend toward higher entropy, more possible arrangements, less recoverable order. That asymmetry shapes memory. You retain records of lower entropy states. You do not retain records of what, from your position, lies ahead. So the difference between past and future is not only psychological, but neither does it prove that time itself is flowing. It shows that processes inside space-time are not symmetric from the point of view of information. You remember one direction. You predict the other. That creates orientation. It does not require a moving present. This matters because it protects the argument from a common mistake. The absence of absolute passage does not mean experience is fake. It means experience must be explained differently. The arrow you live by may come from entropy, not from time itself crossing the universe like a sweeping line. Then the role of observation has to be stated carefully. You are not creating the structure by looking at it. You are not standing outside it, collapsing reality into place through awareness alone. You are inside it. Observation is local. Consciousness is local. Decision, as experienced, is local. What you call choosing may still be real as a process, but it occurs within spacetime, not above it. That is the controlled reveal. Spacetime replaces passage. The block universe follows as a geometric implication. Entropy explains why direction still appears. And the observer does not rescue the old picture. It remains embedded. Once those pieces lock together, the pressure returns with more force than before, because the feeling of choice still remains. But now it remains inside a structure that no longer seems built to support the version of freedom you began with. Now bring it back to the room you are in, not to a distant galaxy, not to an equation on a board, to this screen, to your hands, to the fact that you feel you are here now, hearing this now, thinking about it now. That feeling remains. Physics has not removed it. What it has removed is its privilege. There is no mark in the universe that identifies this moment as the central present. No physical boundary separating what is real from what is not yet real. No universal surface moving through space-time and carrying you with it. You still experience a now, but that now is no longer absolute. It is local. It belongs to your position, your motion, your condition as an observer within the structure, not to reality as a whole. That is the realization that does not reverse. Because once the present loses its absolute status, the moment in which you believe you are choosing loses that status too. You can still think, you can still hesitate, you can still feel the weight of alternatives, but the frame has changed. You are no longer standing at the edge of reality, watching the future arrive. You are inside a space-time structure in which that edge may never have existed. That includes this moment, this room, this thought, this attempt to decide what all of this means. There is a silence in that, a cold one. Not because nothing is real, because what is real is no longer arranged around the intuition that made you feel central. If there is no absolute present, then this moment is not the place where the universe becomes real. And if this moment is not that place, then the experience of choosing here cannot mean what it once meant. You do not lose reality. You lose a certain map of it. And once that map is gone, the old comfort does not return. Because from this point on, whenever you say now, some part of you will know that the word no longer names what you thought it named. Then one final question remains. If all moments exist within a four-dimensional structure, then what exactly are you? Are you the present self moving through reality? Or are you the entire world line, with this conscious moment only mistaking itself for the whole? That is where free will becomes harder to define. Not because choice disappears, because the chooser no longer stands where intuition placed it. You believe you are the source from which the future opens. Physics asks whether you are instead a local awareness inside a structure whose larger form does not wait to be created. That does not end the problem. It opens it. Because if freedom survives here, it will not survive in the form you expected. And beyond this, another pressure waits. Entropy across larger scales. The observer inside quantum theory. The question of whether agency is fundamental or only how structure feels from within. The structure remains, so does the feeling. What no longer remains is the certainty that they mean the same thing.